Hey everyone, and welcome back to another World of Warcraft Legion beta video. Today it's time for another major discussion topic: your ability to swap talents in Legion. That might not seem massive at first, but there are some very real and tangible gameplay implications on your day-to-day that we're going to talk about in this video. Just to quickly recap, you can currently change your talents at the cost of a Tomb of the Clear Mind in the live version of the game. So in between a boss fight in Hellfire Citadel, you can swap out your build to one that's a bit more suited to whatever boss you're going to be fighting. So they plan to change all of this in Legion, and this was detailed in a post by Associate Game Director Ian Hazzikostas. Essentially, they went through a few different iterations on the Legion beta and alpha. Initially, you could swap talents on the fly at no cost, though you couldn't swap talents out if an ability on that talent row was on cooldown. I'd argue that this is essentially the same as the current system because, let's be real, the cost of a Tomb of the Clear Mind is really irrelevant. No one actually cares about that. It's just annoying that you have to click another button. So yeah, the positive aspect of this, though, is you get loads of choice and you can tailor yourself to whatever encounter you're going to face next. The negative aspect is this leads to more busy work in between encounters, and it kind of aids there being a power gap between the players who really engage in that system and those that don't. The social issue can arise, for an example, in a dungeon where everyone's expected to switch from single target on a boss to AoE from trash, etc. Now, Ian makes the point that, and I agree with him here, that it isn't a choice. What talent build you go with, there's always going to be the best one for a situation, and because your build isn't something you're locked into, you just change it on the fly, and you always win. You just need to press a few buttons and you're pretty much ideal for the situation. Now, before we cover the solution to this problem that Blizzard have implemented in Legion, let's bear in mind that during Wrath of the Lich King and the Burning Crusade, you would have to go back to a class trainer and pay gold to refund your talents, and even during vanilla, actually, that cost stung quite a bit relative to how much people would actually earn in-game. So, the solution they're going with is basically a hybrid of the two. You can swap talents in and out freely when you're in a rest area, so a city, an inn, or your class order hall. If you want to swap talents in any other case, you will need to use a consumable item. This consumable is created by scribes, and here's the important bit. It has a material cost that makes it aimed at groups of players. It is something akin to a Jeeves that you drop on the floor, and then people can click on it, so your raid can click on it, and then change up their talents. Ian said this is not something that regular players are meant to keep many stacks of and use freely. Instead, it's something that could be used by groups, especially say in a raid, in between, bosses and trash. The idea here is that they want you to pick a build and then go out into the world and use that build. If you really need to change your build, it will be significantly more expensive than it is currently. So what are my thoughts on this system? Well, I think the controversy surrounding it is, in my view, a product of the Mists of Pandaria talent system, and my opinion on that talent system is that it's not something that I necessarily dislike. I know a lot of people arbitrarily just think, nope, this is bad. I think it's got some really cool pluses to it as well, but I think it's a talent system that gives us a number of very meaningful choices, in that each row has a strong option for a certain type of combat, for example, single target or AoE. These talents have a massive impact on how much damage you do, and each talent can be significantly more powerful in the type of encounter that it's designed for. The system of the past didn't have as many massive choices like that. Indeed, Blizzard were dissatisfied at how you, largely speaking, would just have a single optimal build that you'd always roll with. As you can see, the Mists of Pandaria Onward system, at least to me, it's a bit like switching out your loadout in a game like Call of Duty, or switching your hero mid-match in Overwatch. It's a toolkit that the game encourages you to select from in order to get the job done. The older system was a system of progression where you slowly built it up, and many of the choices were very small. For an example, 1% haste or 1% crit. At least from what I remember, you would just find a optimal build for the most recent patch, and you'd largely forget the system unless you're on the bleeding edge of content. I get the impression that going into a fight with a slightly suboptimal build back then was a lot less of a problem than having a slightly suboptimal build now, because having even one talent row out of place can have a massive effect on your character's performance. I mean, imagine you go into a fight with Glaive Toss instead of Barrage. That could be very bad for you. Now, I see how Blizzard are trying to make a more impactful decision here, but it seems like it's rather arbitrary. When we talk about a game being a series of interesting decisions, I think what we're really talking about is the core gameplay decisions rather than just meta stuff that kind of gets thrown on top like this. But I really do see their predicament. Full freedom of choice means that with this system, the current talent system, there is never a choice that involves weighing up the pros and the cons. However, with too many restrictions, players just feel artificially held back from doing what they want to do. Now, as I said above, the new talent system seems to emphasize this freedom and make it something that players would crave a lot more than the older talent system. So throwing more restrictions on it that it was necessarily designed to handle just feels a little bit off to me. What this boils down to is really, what do they want talents to be? Are they like a weapon loadout that your character chooses from on the fly, or are they a core choice about what your character is? I'd argue that the older talent system was the latter and the new talent system is the former. If they were to fully commit to the new system essentially being a weapon loadout, perhaps you could store up, your talents in builds, right? And you could use a hotkey to swap between your builds. Maybe it could be on a cooldown outside of cities, so swapping your build would still be a choice that you have to make in combat. But perhaps something like that would make more sense. But even as I write this video and talk, through it, that just seems like it's as arbitrary as what Blizzard have just said they're going to implement in Legion. Actually, the developers of Diablo 3 had a similar predicament. The skill system in Diablo 3 is actually quite similar to the WoW talents. It used to be, a long time ago, that whenever you kill a boss, you would get a buff called Nephilim Valor, I believe, that would increase your magic find, and that would stack up to 5 times. However, it would reset if you changed your build. Obviously, their idea here is they wanted to make your build really important, and they de-emphasized you changing it on the fly because you would lose that buff, which obviously is a bad thing the players don't want to have happen. However, it just led to frustration, and they have since disabled it, allowing players to change their builds pretty much freely. On paper, what they have proposed does accomplish the desired effect, and the logic behind it, and all of, I think, what Ian says in his post, does make sense. But I maybe have the feeling they should just go back to the drawing board and think of a less annoying way of managing this system. While the system is logically sound, player frustration is a very predictable product of it. Sometimes frustration over a decision is good and serves to make that decision something that really stands out in players' minds and matters, but sometimes it's just frustration for frustration's sake with not much of a large benefit. So I think that's less of a good thing in this case. Look, normally in these videos I like to propose some sort of solution to the problem or tie it all into a really nice conclusion that's snappy. I can't really do that with this video because I think neither option is a great one. I suppose they should either go down a overall design route that involves people having less moment-to-moment choice, i.e. something less akin to the current talent system, or they should really embrace the freeform nature of the current talent system and what it really, I think, wants players to do with their choices. I mean, come on. You have a clear single target talent, you have a clear AoE target. That's saying to the player, if you're in this situation, pick this one. If you're in that situation, pick that one. Therefore, the player is going to want to do that, and when you just see this random roadblock appear that doesn't feel diegetic, that just feels like it's been thrown in to be a spanner in the works, I don't really think that feels good. So if they are going to go with this freeform system, I think they should just double down on it. They should make it less annoying via increased UI support for swapping builds of talents, and really embrace that as a form of gameplay that they can have in their game. There might be a really cool way to accomplish that goal. And of course, it's also worth pointing out that there will be times when just having a preset build will make sense. For an example, if you have a particular synergy with your legendary item, should you get one, then that will influence your talent build as well, in a way that maybe won't 100% just be as cut and dry as, if it's an AoE situation, this talent, or if it's single target, take that talent. They are my rough thoughts on this topic. I am extremely keen to see what people have got to say about it, so throw some comments down in the comments section to let me know, or hit me up directly on Twitter. That's it for the video though, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.